speak 100 miles an hour, but we've got lots of interesting topics we want to cover, so I'm going to kick off now. So hi everyone, my name's Sarah Albright. I am a director and founder of Retail 100 Consulting. There are 4 of us in the business, all with a buying and merchandising background, and interestingly all of that kind of mostly came in John Lewis, so to be chatting with 2 John Lewis people is really brilliant because I'm learning lots about where the business has gone now. And I'm delighted to introduce them both. We're really lucky to have them here today to give us some insight into what the business is doing. So firstly, we have Catherine Loader. She's the Sustainability Manager at the John Lewis Partnership. Really interesting background as well across sustainability and sourcing roles, from Burberry and ASOS to Debenhams and beyond retro. So really interesting fashion background. And then Nicola Kirby, who's the John Lewis Head of Sourcing for Fashion and Home. So prior to working at John Lewis, she was at Next for 20 years on global sourcing, including a period working in Asia. And the Source Fashion team are really lucky to have her as a member of the Source Fashion Advisory Board. So we're going to kick off. We just thought, firstly, we'd just talk a bit around the background of what the business in terms of John Lewis is doing. So, Catherine, we were going to start in just giving us some context as the John Lewis sustainability strategy and where you're heading with that.
Yeah, sure. And just first of all, thank you so much for having us both here today. So just to explain a little bit about our sustainability strategy at John Lewis, there's about 40 of us in the sustainability team, which sometimes surprises people. It's actually quite a big team. And we're what's called a pan-partnership team, so we face both into John Lewis and Waitrose. On the John Lewis side, there's kind of different pillars. So there's a team that look after responsible sourcing, so that includes raw materials, making sure that all of the kind of human rights elements of our supply chain are up to scratch. The area that I sit is the environment team, so we look after circularity, which is where my role sits, but we also look at climate, biodiversity, and really kind of getting into the detail of the environmental impact of our supply chain. And then finally, we've got a team that look after social impact. So again, that's thinking about the communities in which John Lewis operates and how we can kind of be better connected to those communities. We do a lot of work with charities as well. So those are kind of the 3 pillars. But yeah, my role really sits in that circularity element. So looking at how we can embed circularity into our own brand products from the initial design stage. So thinking about things like increasing recycled content, durability and recyclability. So how can we make sure that our products are more easily recyclable when they reach their end of life?
Amazing. So we decided, kind of as with the title, is around discussing strategies for fostering alignment and building trust between sustainability and sourcing, that we'd kind of take a live example as something more interesting that we can bring to life to talk to you about today, hence why Nicola's clutching a load of samples. She's not going to suddenly jump onto the catwalk or do a quick change on us. And I'd really encourage you kind of after the talk today to go and look more at this on the John Lewis website. From talking to the guys, I hadn't come across it before, but it's a really interesting initiative they're working on, and you'll be able to look at the product in more detail online. So to kind of spoil the surprise there, but we wanted to talk about something they've been working on called the Circular Design Collection, if I've got that right, ladies, and just use that as a case study to show you about how they've worked and the decisions and bridging the gap between critical functions in making a new project like this work. So really probably the best place to start is what is the Circular Design Collection.
Shall I kick off?
Yeah, shall I just introduce my team? So in contrast to Catherine, who works in a team of 40, I've actually got 10 in my team across the whole of Fashion and Home own brand COGS. And we were part of the Matrix team that started this the sleep project, I call it. And, you know, the whole way we started was starting really well. So all the E&S initiatives are on our scorecard. Everyone at John Lewis is all aware of the same target. So that was the good start, really. And then just to pass on to Catherine to talk about the project.
Yeah, so we launched it in June 2024, and it's a small collection of about 20 products across 5 different product categories. Across both fashion and home, we've got some fashion examples here today, but these products have all been designed to meet our circular design principles. So those 3 kind of key things that I said around increasing recycled content, durability, and recyclability. These products have been kind of redesigned to meet those criteria. So we've got with us some women's wear pajamas, so we can kind of explain some of the changes that we've made to these products. So this example of the pyjama top, we've taken out the interfacing from the collar. That makes the product much easier to recycle when it reaches its end of life. It's also made from 100% organic cotton. And again, we try and do this thing called monomateriality. So instead of using a blend of different materials, we just use a single material. Again, that makes it much easier to recycle. Do you want to talk about the shorts?
So we took out the elastic from the waistband and replaced it with a channel waistband, and we've just got the same cotton throughout the whole thing, so recyclable. And the same, actually, should we talk about this top as well? The bottoms are the same, but we've taken out the adjustable plastic little straps that you'd normally have on this, so totally can be circular.
And then some of the other products, so we have a baby wear sleep suit, for example, that uses kind of increased recycled content. So it's got recycled polyester zips and threads as well. And again, it kind of fits into that monomaterial aspect, so it can be more easily recycled. And all of the products have been tested to a higher kind of wash durability test as well, to make sure that they're really durable as well.
Amazing.
So yeah.
And in that process, we were talking about kind of the sort of engaging other teams and kind of how that works. So, we very much said sustainability and sourcing, but it goes beyond that. Kind of how did you kind of find who else you had to engage, take them on the journey? Were the easier ones than others? Did everyone kind of understand where you were taking it?
Yeah, Catherine started out really well in the beginning and set up workshops over a period of time, set out a critical path, and everyone was brought into the process from the beginning. So Q&T, sourcing offices, suppliers, the whole E&S team, sourcing team, buying, merchandising. So everyone was on the same page, and I think that's really important because it is something different, starting with design, of course. So the most important thing is how this is designed and the fabrics that go into it, or substrates if it's furniture, or another category.
I think also, we were very conscious of, we wanted this to be a co-creation piece between the sustainability and the sourcing teams and the other matrix teams, because I think quite often sustainability teams can kind of sit in their own little bubble and set targets and set strategies and then just not really go and talk to the rest of the business. So it was just so important that we kind of work together on this, and we ultimately want to make products that are commercially viable, that customers love, and they've got the added benefit of being designed with circularity in mind. And that's really important to get the balance of those things right.
Yeah, 100%.
And there's been a lot of learns out of this project, actually. So now design are integrating all these principles into the rest of their nightwear. So it's, they're integrating it. Ultimately, it starts with design, but it's got to be sustainable and have longevity. So they're using all these principles now.
And from a sourcing point of view, were you able to achieve this with the same suppliers and factories? I'm imagining it didn't mean you had to go looking elsewhere. It's just a change of mindset.
Existing
almost.
Suppliers, exactly, yeah.
And I think, again, that's something that's so important. We have to kind of foster the relationships with suppliers. This shouldn't be about completely switching your supply base. This should be about really kind of educating the suppliers, getting them really engaged with circularity and excited by it. And a lot of suppliers are doing really great things already, and it's just about bringing them on the journey.
Perfect. And we kind of referenced it a couple of times, but for people who are not familiar, matrix working kind of as a concept is quite important when you're trying to achieve projects like this. So kind of how did you go about kind of embedding kind of the matrix team to make this happen? Do you kind of feel like that's an essential part, I suppose, of getting a project like this across the line?
Everybody knew about this project from day one. I think what Catherine's team did really well is they went to everyone's meetings and presented their concepts, and then one person or two people were nominated from each team. So there was one lead from each area who would, be the champion for that particular project. So across the whole of home and fashion. So it's all about starting well.
And I think now the next stage of it is, like Nicola said, we're starting to scale this up across all of our product categories. So it's, originally we started off with a small group, small group of stakeholders across the different teams. But now it's the next challenge is how do we really start to scale this up, get all of the teams involved. That's going to be tricky, but I think we've started on a really good path now, and we're obviously still on a journey with this. This is, our first kind of collection of products designed with circularity in mind, but it's really something that the business believes in. We really want to start to kind of grow it as well. So,
It's about communication as well, because one of the questions I always ask is, how much is that going to cost? What's the difference between elastic and a channel waistband? And what's the difference between when you take the interfacing out? What's that going to cost us? And obviously buying asks those questions all the time. It's making sure that we make the right decisions for the product. So ultimately it's a beautiful product for the customer, but it's also sustainable and circular. So it's communication on all fronts, really.
And you mentioned kind of challenges. Were there any kind of moments along the way that you kind of thought were challenges you might not overcome, or looking back, like in hindsight, which is always a wonderful thing, kind of things you do differently for the future? Now you're trying to take it into other product areas?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about one of the product categories that we were looking into, actually. It was going to be a slightly bigger selection of products, and we really had difficulties with one of the suppliers. They wanted to do something really quite innovative, but the challenge of doing things kind of in an innovative way, I can't say that, is that sometimes it's more tricky with the kind of the certification side. So obviously a key part of my role is looking at how do we make sure we do this, but we ensure that we're not greenwashing in any way. So that came up as a bit of a challenge. So we actually decided, we need to park this now. We can't kind of go down this road with this particular product. So that was definitely a challenge. And in this specific example, actually, one of the challenges was around the waistband and removing the elastic. And we were worried that the customer might react negatively to that. The customer is so used to having an elastic waistband, and are they going to be used to having the kind of draw cord instead? But actually, it's landed really well with customers. All the products are sold through. But actually, some of the customers say they actually prefer this to the elastic waistband. So that's an interesting learning. We originally thought it was going to be a really difficult challenge to overcome, but actually it's turned out quite a positive way. So
perceived to be premium.
Yes,
One of the challenges from a sourcing point of view is that this project did take a long time, and we're used to working at pace. Something would never take longer than 6 months. This took 2 years.
Wow, yeah.
From beginning to end. So hopefully what we've done is take learns from that, and then we'll speed up. But it is you've got to do it right.
Yeah.
And it's allowing yourself the space to get that right. So, it is a long-term thing. It's not just something to turn around in one season.
Yeah, and as you said, you've started to embed different behaviours in like the design team. So going forward, it becomes more part of how you do it, as opposed to it being something new or something different, which is really great to see. And I suppose kind of building on what you said, the surprise kind of customer reaction, how have you found in general customers' response to the collection? I think it's an interesting one in terms of whether they love the product or not, but alongside that, how you feel kind of wider consumers understand the circularity message. So probably a couple of things in that point around kind of how well the product's done versus people understanding circularity as a concept.
I do think you really had to search for the product online. You had to know it was there, and you had to look for it. So I think there's something around the marketing of when you're doing something really good, let's shout about it. Because we didn't do that, really.
And I think that the difficulty with that is customers, they don't necessarily understand what the word circularity means. They're getting to grips with sustainability, but when you say circularity, they just think, that means packaging, that means recycling. So I think the challenge is, how do you communicate it to customers? Like, if we talked about monomateriality, your average customer probably wouldn't know what that word means.
Exactly.
But again, how do you communicate it without being at risk of greenwashing? So it's difficult to kind of balance all of those things and do marketing in an exciting way as well to get customers really excited about this. So it's trying to balance all of those different things.
Amazing. Which is exactly why I was encouraging, if everyone here can go and have a good look afterwards as well, that'd be brilliant, because it helps these guys as well when people are looking, the marketing team are like, there's something interesting here. So anything you can do to support would be amazing. So we've kind of talked about what's next, kind of more circularity, kind of do you think there'll be more things like this that you might start to look at beyond kind of circularity ideas, different product areas, different projects? Now you've kind of got such a strong working kind of team going.
We have a lot bubbling under the surface that I can't talk about now. But really, the most important thing is embedding this into our not everyday product. And there's very much a mindset shift within our design team, and they're thinking that way because this was such a long time. There was so much to learn doing this project.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. It's about embedding it for sure, and just getting it part of the way that we develop product. And rather than it being just a separate collection, it's just part of the way that John Lewis develops products. I think is going to be really key.
Yeah, amazing. So really kind of key themes that we're pulling out around kind of having that purpose at the start. What are you trying to achieve? The communication being really key, taking everyone on the journey, especially in larger businesses like John Lewis. We often talk about turning the oil tanker, but kind of there's so many stakeholders and people that need to be involved. And ultimately, which I think probably is the most kind of relevant point in this category, that product has to have credibility in its own right. At the end of the day, like you mentioned, you've got to be producing something commercial and something that will stand up against the rest of the assortments and the brands you have.
That's exactly the point with these. The customer was coming in because they're beautiful, and they were buying it because they're beautiful, but oh, by the way, we have a swing tag that says this product is part of a collection that was created using our circular design principles. So it's an added benefit. It's beautiful in its own right first, and the right price, and then there's an added benefit that is circular.
Fab. Well, we've probably rattled through that at a pace, but I'm also conscious of leaving some time for questions. And I'd like to thank the guys because it's quite difficult kind of to share a certain amount. And John Lewis are great. There's a lot of kind of open information around sustainability policies on their website that you can go and read. And I won't probe the guys anymore to try and find out what's coming next because it's all commercial secrets. But I think it's a definite watch this space because there's some really great things happening, and we definitely all need to be cheerleaders for that. So with the few minutes left of the session, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask?
Hi. It was really great hearing how you incorporated design into circularity with monomateriality. And I just wondered whether there were any other circular initiatives that John Lewis was exploring.
Yeah, great question. So another kind of key part of my role is around circular business models. So things like rental, repair, pre-love, take-back schemes. So we've had a take-back scheme for a number of years where customers can bring in their old fashion items into stores and they'll get a voucher in return. We also just recently launched our repair service, and that's in collaboration with Timpson's. And that's done really well. We started off in 5 stores. We're now looking at expanding that to all of our other stores as well. And then finally, Pre-Loved. Pre-Loved is doing really well for us. So we started with a pop-up in our Peter Jones store in Chelsea in collaboration with Sign of the Times, who are a kind of luxury accessories provider. And again, customers have absolutely loved that. So that's, second-hand kind of luxury handbags and accessories. And we're starting to look at expanding that into other categories and into further stores. And you can actually go onto jl.com and buy pre-loved handbags online as well now. So we're doing lots of exciting stuff. We're, like a lot of other retailers, we're kind of starting off with trialing a few different things, but the ambition, like this, is to really scale it up.
Got a rental site.
Yeah,
rental
absolutely, yeah. Fashion rental as well.
That's a question.
Hi, I just wondered with that particular collection, I know you just said about the repair, recycle, etc., but was there anything you're doing specifically with that to then break that down to go back into the same product so that it is completely circular?
So not for this collection. That is obviously what we all strive for, but that is very difficult to achieve at the moment. So currently with a lot of kind of fibre-to-fibre recycling, that often has to, we don't have fibre-to-fibre recycling facilities in the UK at the moment. So that is something that is absolutely the ambition, but it's a kind of watch this space, not right now. But we, like I said, have made and kind of designed these products so they can be more easily recycled. So they will go into an ecosystem where they can be recycled into new fibres, but getting that final kind of step of getting it back into our products, is really tricky. Like Nicola said, we're working on some really exciting projects which kind of lend itself to that kind of area. We can't really talk about them, but yeah, that's something that we're really aiming towards.
It's small steps as well, isn't it? I think don't let perfect get in the way of good. We're doing some really good stuff, and it's, you know, there's no magic wand that anyone's got that can make, you know, make everything perfect, but I still think we ought to shout about the things that we're doing that are good.
Yeah. And to coin the X Factor phrase, everything's a journey, kind of, if you weren't moving towards a better place, then that would be a bigger problem than actually striving to get somewhere better, absolutely. Have we got any more? Okay, unless you want to see us appear in the catwalk, we're going to make a sharp exit. But thank you all for joining us for this short session, and really thank you to Catherine and Nicola for sharing some insight. And do come and have a closer look at the samples; they are truly beautiful. Doing the big sale here on encouraging you all to shop soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.